Okay, we're back. I want to congratulate everyone for the excellent testimony done very professionally. We are now on our 13th speaker, down to 23. Jeff Lisanick, Reverend Keary, Kincannon, and Darcy Franz. Lisanick, I guess it is, right? I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Lisanick.
Well, I wasn't even close the second time.
Not even close. Yeah. I live at 3442 Gunston Road in Alexandria. And I just want to say, in light of recent convention events, that this speech is all mine, not plagiarized, and totally written by me.
Now, if you were blonde and wearing a white dress, I would really be concerned.
So I'm speaking on behalf of the Consumer Advisory Council. For anyone who may be unfamiliar, the Consumer Advisory Council is part of the framework of the county's 10-year plan to end homelessness by 2018. And that's why I'm here tonight. Every member of the CAC is using or has used homeless services in Fairfax County. And while our stories may differ in some ways, we all have in common the fact that we did not have a place to call home. 7 years ago, I found myself homeless and staying in the Kennedy shelter. I was unemployed and competing with all the other job seekers displaced by the Great Recession. Had it not been for the Kennedy shelter, my life could have taken a very different turn. But that resource was there. Today, I'm part of the management team at that same Kennedy shelter. And it's like that with the other members of the CAC as well, who just needed a bridge in a troubled time. The proposal before you is for a temporary, yes, temporary relocation of the Bailey's homeless shelter. Why is it so important that you approve this relocation? Because shelters are a critical tool in the fight to prevent and end homelessness. Shelters are an integral part of our social safety net for people in crisis. When people are sick, they go to a hospital. When people are homeless, they go to a shelter. Shelters keep people from sleeping in their cars and under overpasses. Shelters keep people from being exposed to torrential downpours and hurricanes, as well as extreme heat and extreme cold, which has actually killed people. As long as bad things happen to good people, we will need shelters. And this particular shelter fits into the county's comprehensive plan, allowing a sorely needed revitalization to take place in the Mason District. And remember, it's temporary. Permanent shelter location on Seminary Road has been identified and is now under contract. When the county says that this shelter will be here for only 4 or 5 years, they really mean it. And let's not forget that there will be an advisory committee serving as a formal channel for surrounding citizens to voice their issues and concerns. And I'd like to speak to that for just a minute. There's been a lot of fear-mongering and scare tactics surrounding this proposal. Increased crime, this and that. You would think that the county was trying to place a toxic waste dump in the middle of a residential neighborhood rather than a haven for our most vulnerable citizens. To hear some tell it, we're going to revert to the lawlessness of the Old West. But let's take a deep breath and step back, shall we? Do some people experiencing homelessness have challenges? Of course. But that doesn't make them worthy of condemnation. It makes them human. Challenges such as mental illness or alcoholism are not confined to a particular socioeconomic status. They span race, class, and every other demographic indicator that we know of. The subtle and sometimes overt demonizing and dehumanizing of our county's homeless must end. I would like to add that in addition to being the chair of the Consumer Advisory Council and a coordinator at the Kennedy Shelter, I'm also on the governing board of the Fairfax Falls Church Partnership to Prevent and End Homelessness, the body whose function it is to implement the county's 10-year plan to prevent and end homelessness. It's been my pleasure to work with my colleagues such as Board of Supervisors Chair Sharon Bulova and Sheriff Stacy Kincaid in this important work. I'm also co-chair of the Advocacy and Resource Development Committees. And I take great pride when I think of how our efforts have helped contribute to the 42% reduction in homelessness that Dean mentioned since the beginning of the 10-year plan. I stand before you as living, breathing proof of the critical importance of our county's homeless shelters. Now, you have before you a choice: to succumb to the climate of fear, hysteria, and misinformation, or to ensure that some of our most vulnerable citizens are afforded the protection they deserve by simple virtue of their humanity. To me, it's not even a close call. And I'll leave you with this. 47 years ago today, actually yesterday, Neil Armstrong uttered the famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." We, the Consumer Advisory Council, submit to you that you have the chance to take a giant leap for this county's homeless. Please let history reveal that you took that leap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on your accomplishments.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Mr. Lesniak? I want you to know also, I was instrumental in establishing the Kennedy Shelter, and I'm glad to hear your testimony this evening and the positive thing that it's doing for our community. In fact, right across the street, there's a 6-story apartment building in which we're going to have additional assisted housing. So as families are able to leave the shelter, they will have some capacity to move into apartments right across this street from there. You may have seen it. It's under construction right now.
I see it every day. I was going to mention it, but I mean, if the county approved that, they obviously are not afraid of having a shelter right next to it.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Keary Kincannon, Darcy Friends, Jessica Kadima.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, my name is Keary Kincannon. Excuse me, I pastor Rising Hope United Methodist Mission Church. We're at 8220 Russell Road on the Lee District side of the Mount Vernon Highway. We house the Vic Hop Shelter, operated with New Hope Housing and a coalition of community churches in both the Mount Vernon and Lee districts. As a provider of temporary shelter, I know how important shelter is to people that are disenfranchised, that are out on their luck, that are down in the streets. You heard Jeff's testimony, and that's a wonderful testimony of what shelter provides for individuals. I have witnessed hundreds of once homeless individuals get back on their feet because of the grounding that a shelter gives them. I think that the fears of having a shelter in your neighborhood or next to you is unfounded, and that's what I have seen from my years and experience of working with the homeless. I can say with the utmost confidence that when the government, when nonprofits, when the faith communities work together to serve those that are most in need, that it improves the overall quality of life in the community. It lifts people up, again, like you heard from Jeff's testimony. This has been our experience at Rising Hope, and what our experience has done and has shown me is that when we all work together, we actually have a more cohesive and more engaged community working together on positive projects in the community. Again, I remind you, you don't need to be reminded, but this is a temporary location. The county has signed a contract for a permanent location, and I'm confident that this even temporary location will be managed extremely well, that the community working together with the shelter will run this shelter in some positive ways that have a good impact on our community. I believe that the community that works together to take care of its most vulnerable and disenfranchised members is a healthy community. And ignoring the needs of this population only makes the problems worse for our community. My faith tells me that the way we treat the least among us says a whole lot about what is really important to us and what values guide our lives. So I urge you to approve this temporary location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Darcy Franz, Jessica Kadima, Carol Turner.